Every single morning for 10 years, before he ever said good morning, my husband would find me somewhere in the house and simply look at me for a moment. Not a glance. A real look. Brief but deliberate, as though he were confirming something. And every evening before the lamps were fully out, he did it again. I can picture it so clearly even now. The particular stillness that would come over his face for just a second or two, his eyes moving quickly but carefully, taking in something I could never quite name, before his shoulders would visibly relax, and the ordinary warmth of his expression would return. It happened so quickly most days that I doubt anyone outside our marriage ever noticed it at all. I did not understand this habit for the first 3 years of our marriage, and when I finally asked him why, the answer he gave me was heavier than anything I had expected to hear. My name is Rachel, and this is the story of the twice-daily habit my husband Samuel kept for an entire decade, and the reason behind it that took me 3 years to finally uncover. I want to describe exactly what this looked like because from the outside it was so subtle I almost did not notice it myself for the first year of our marriage. Samuel would come in from the barn each morning, and before greeting me properly, before asking about breakfast, his eyes would simply find me across the kitchen and rest there for a moment. Checking, I would later understand, though I did not have that word for it yet. And each evening as we settled the house for the night, the same brief searching look would pass over me before he ever said a word. I noticed it first as simply a quirk of his personality. Samuel was a naturally observant man, quiet in the particular way of someone who watches more than he speaks. I assumed this was simply part of that quietness, a habit of noticing, nothing more significant than that. It was my sister-in-law, Samuel's own sister, who first made me wonder if there was more to it. She visited one afternoon during my second year of marriage, and in an unguarded moment, watching Samuel do his evening check as we prepared for bed, she said quietly, almost to herself, "Still doing that, is he?" I asked her what she meant. She looked immediately as though she wished she had not said anything, and changed the subject quickly, telling me only that it was Samuel's story to tell, not hers. I want you to sit with that for a moment because I think it captures something important about how private grief and private fear can move through a family, known by everyone around the edges, spoken about carefully or not at all, waiting for the right person to finally ask the right question. I did not ask Samuel directly for another full year. Not out of fear, exactly, but out of a sense that whatever this was, it belonged to him, and he would tell me when he was ready. I simply continued noticing it. The morning check, the evening check, so consistent I could have set a clock by it, if setting a clock by such a small human gesture made any sense at all. The night I finally asked was an ordinary one. We were sitting together after the children were asleep, and I simply said it plainly. "Samuel, I have noticed you look at me a certain way every morning and every evening for as long as I have known you. I want to understand why." He was quiet for a long moment, and then he told me about his first wife. I want to be careful telling you this part, because it is not my story alone to hold lightly. Even now, years later, Samuel had been married before, briefly, in his early 20s, to a young woman named Anna. They had been married less than 2 years when Anna fell suddenly and severely ill. An illness that moved fast, faster than anyone expected, faster than the local doctor could properly diagnose before it had already done its worst. Samuel told me that in the final weeks, before anyone understood how serious things had become, there had been mornings when Anna seemed perfectly fine, evenings when nothing at all seemed wrong, right up until the morning he found her unable to wake at all. He described that morning to me with a precision that told me he had relived it thousands of times in the years since. The exact gray quality of the light coming through their bedroom window, the exact stillness of the house before he realized anything was wrong, the exact moment his own certainty that everything was fine collapsed into something he never fully recovered from. He told me, his voice quieter than I had ever heard it, that the hardest part was not the illness itself. It was the not knowing. The mornings and evenings when he simply assumed everything was fine because nothing looked visibly wrong, and how completely, catastrophically incorrect that assumption had turned out to be. Have you ever carried a fear so specific that it reshaped an ordinary daily habit without you even fully realizing it was happening? That is exactly what those twice-daily checks had become for Samuel. Not suspicion, not control. A quiet, private ritual of confirmation. A habit built from genuine loss. A promise he had made to himself, without ever fully articulating it even to himself. that he would never again simply assume someone he loved was fine without actually looking closely enough to know. I did not know what to say to him that night at first. I simply held his hand for a long while, understanding, for the first time, the full weight behind 10 years. By then, it had already been 3 years of our own marriage, on top of however long it had continued in the years before me, of a habit I had originally mistaken for simple quietness. I want to tell you something that surprised me, learning all of this. I did not feel burdened by it, the way I might have expected to. I felt instead a kind of tenderness I had not anticipated. Understanding that Samuel's careful morning and evening glance was not evidence of a man who doubted my well-being without reason. It was evidence of a man who had once lost someone he loved to exactly that kind of unexamined assumption, and who had built, out of that loss, a small daily practice of paying genuine attention rather than ever again taking anyone's well-being for granted. We have been married for many years now, well past that conversation. Samuel still does his morning and evening check. I no longer wonder about it. I have come instead to find something quietly beautiful in it. A small daily ritual of a man making sure, twice every single day, that someone he loves is genuinely, actually, fully all right, rather than simply assuming it the way the rest of us so often do. I want to ask you something before I go tonight. Is there a habit in someone you love, something quiet, something consistent, something you might have mistaken for simple personality, that could actually be carrying an old grief or an old fear you have never fully understood? I believe these small daily rituals, the ones we barely notice in the people closest to us, are often carrying far more weight than they appear to on the surface. I am grateful now, 3 years into finally understanding it, for every single morning and evening Samuel has ever looked at me that way. I understand now that it was never about doubt. It was always, from the very beginning, about love that had already learned, once, the hardest possible way, exactly how much it costs to look away. Some mornings now, when I catch him doing it, I let my eyes hold his for just a moment longer than necessary, a small silent way of telling him without words that I see what he is doing, and that I am grateful for it, rather than simply letting the moment pass unnoticed the way I did for those first 3 years. I think, in its own quiet way, that has become its own small ritual between us. His checking and my acknowledging, 2 private habits meeting in the same brief moment, morning and evening, for as long as we both shall live.